And it's not that we picked this because you need to know this information. We picked this because the text is structured very clearly, very rigidly in a compare and contrast structure, and it's almost impossible to comprehend just reading a text. You need to make a table, you need to fill in the table, understand what these things are, and understand the criteria and how to place them to be able to make any sense of this text. And the point of that, again, is to stress the importance of text structure. This, for us as college students, is challenging, and we're going to have things as educators, particularly within our fields, where the texts that we're reading are going to seem simple, they're going to seem straightforward. So remember this feeling of confusion and struggle, because that's something that your students are going to be doing and working through. And so when you work with them, you want to make sure that you're providing them the tools, the graphic organizers, and explaining to them these different text structures, these different approaches, how to go about reading to be able to make as much sense of that text as possible. So for the discussion, just a couple quick questions because we are running short. Talk in your group about some of the different content areas or your content area, about how you would use some of these different text structures to help students in reading text in your area. Just take a couple minutes. Talk to the partner.
Yeah. I don't know for different
For math, compare and contrast.
And they mean even math too for problem solution. Like that one actually to solve. And I guess you could change that and make it a little arrow.
Yes. How's it going?
Good.
Wonderful. Much better with this one than
yes, this
prior?
is a little easier. Wonderful.
For foreign language, for me, I mean, you're working with words all the time. So if you're taking words like this, it's good to like connect words to each other. So like my methods class, we're just learning about like how a noun is like there's a noun and then there's verbs built off of that, adjectives built off of that, and then opposites built off of that. So we've got our synonyms. So like some way to like encase that within a graphic organizer would be really helpful.
Another one we just for math definitions.
Peanut butter?
Jelly.
Wonderful. So can we just go around the room quick? Just hear from your, what your subject is, and how you would use what type of text you're going to have and how you would use those to help students understand.
Each person.
Or pair.
Just
pair,
raise your hands.
pairs.
Yeah.
Bob, you had a good one for social studies. Can you start us off?
Sure. I really like what Mark said about just the key ideas and key words and using those bubbles. Broad field social studies or history is such a dense subject that if I could have someone walk away with even a vague notion of what I'm talking about, it would feel pretty good.
Okay, whose phone's on?
Andrew, what did you have to say?
We talked about like if you're comparing like different things like parabolas and other things that are graphed, you can use the compare and contrast and just say, hey, these are how they're similar, these are how they're different. Or with geometric proofs, if you're doing a proof that by contradiction or a proof by induction, which are two completely different things, you see how basic step is different, but they lead to the same conclusion.
Yeah, Shannon.
Another good one for math. If you're going through like all the different types of shapes, like there are so many different like parallelograms and rectangles and squares, and seeing how they're all related, putting them together, kind of like a Venn diagram of like, okay, these are all your shapes, these are your squares or rectangles, and then like, the four-sided ones, like what fits inside there, what doesn't, where do they all play in relation to each other.
Great. Gina, Kate, Alyssa, Will, what did you guys have for science?
This example that you have on the board where you're talking about mitosis and meiosis and using the compare and contrast graphic organizer for that. so like different characteristics of separate kingdoms, like the kingdom of Hannah has these characteristics, or like that sort of thing.
Not in foreign language?
Hey. I was talking about how we always talk about in foreign language the connection of words, so how there's a noun and then off of a noun comes an adjective and like it's similar, and how off the noun comes a verb and it's similar. So using this keyword thing, and you put your word in the middle and then you sprout off like what can be off of it, whether that be a word that's similar, such like a noun to an adjective, or even something like its opposite or its synonym or something like that, because we're working with so many new words for students in a different language. So.
Okay. Sarah and Professor McLean, did you have anything?
We had the exact same one that Shannon had, but we also, for math,
Yes.
yeah. And we also talked about how for math, the problem and solution, graphic organizer thing is pretty much what you do all the time. You know, you have to list your problem and you show your steps to your final solution. It's a great way to organize it.
If you want to jot these down, there's not exactly a place in Buell. You can put it in your journal or on the back of your options for organizers.
So I'll just kind of explain some of these tips quickly while we wrap up and take some jobs. So,
Wait till they're ready to run.
okay.
Sorry. No, it's not. So put it on a piece of paper or in your journal. Not exactly.
Buell really only covers the text frames, which is why we had to supplement and go in depth on some of the graphic organization. Okay, so some tips for you all as future teachers to keep in mind. Always make sure you review your reading selection. So while you're reading it, take notes on observations, main ideas, what you would like your students to actually take away from your lesson. And then possibly beyond that big one or two other things. If they can get the big idea, wonderful. If they can get a couple supporting ones, excellent.
The other thing is that these structures aren't something that you want to test students on. You don't want to give them the sheet and ask them again, you know, which structure is this? This is something that's supposed to help students because most texts aren't going to be as, you know, singularly structured as this one was. Most are going to be a combination of these things. So the trick is helping students define which structure helps them make the most sense out of the text.
Also keep in mind how easily your textbook, how readable is your textbook? Is it easy to synthesize the information? If I was reading a math textbook the same way I would read an English textbook or a novel, it would probably be more difficult for me to comprehend the math without graphic organizers or text frames explaining differences between shapes, equations, things of that nature.
And finally, use a variety of these strategies frequently during the course of your regular instruction. And you can work that in anytime they have a reading assignment. You know, start it off with them and explain to them what you see about how that text is structured and which one of these is probably going to help them the best. And you can talk to them afterwards to get a better idea of how well they're able to use those structures to help them with the reading. We already covered that. Text structure that's best used can vary on a couple of things: the author's intent, why they're writing, what the student is reading for, and the student's background knowledge. And here are the standards for InTASC Wisconsin teachers and social studies. And here is a collection of our references.